Hey guys, off the Mike Sports Network here, previewing the Final Four. We've got Florida and Auburn in the early game. We've got Duke and Houston in the late game. Um, just so full disclosure, I had half the Final Four correct. I had Duke and Florida actually playing for the national championship, with Florida winning. I had Auburn out in the 16 to Texas A&M. Texas A&M has now made a coaching change, and that's a whole separate thing. And then I had Houston out to Tennessee, so I got that wrong. So let's start off with the early game. Florida and Auburn, a rematch from earlier in the season. Florida, I believe, went to Auburn and won by double digits against the regular season champion. So it's the matchup of the regular season SEC champion and the tournament champion. So this will be interesting. What this comes down to, I think Florida and their size and their depth, I think, are going to just wear out Auburn. I don't know the health of Janai Broom. They say he's 100% healthy. I mean, he pulled a Willis Reed last week. He's the SEC player of the year. He's one of the best players in America. I just, what I've seen from Florida, even though they've escaped in a couple of situations because Walter Clayton has just been so great down the stretch of the game. I think the Gators are going to win this game. I think Thomas Houck has been incredible off the bench. Alex Condon, who's probably their second best player, second or third best player, hasn't really played that well. Elijah Martin's been in this spot. He was at FAU a couple of years ago when they went to the Final Four. Like, they've got experience, they've got depth, and on top of it, they won the previous matchup earlier in the season. Give me the Gators. I'm not going to back away from my initial prediction of having them in the national championship game. Duke versus Houston's interesting because Duke, from a side, one thing that I didn't account for when I picked this tournament, I was a little bit worried about the health of Cooper Flagg and how this was going to affect this team. But leaving out the fact that I just literally saw Duke kind of steamroll they almost collapsed against North Carolina. Like, they're a good team without Cooper Flagg. Con Knippel's going to be a lottery pick. Cameron Malawach is going to probably be up there in the lottery. Like, they've got Tyrese Proctor, who's been there for a long time. They've got dudes all over the place. Like, this is a deep and talented, versatile, very strong. Like, a lot of people point out, because their offense, they're great defensively. So they've just blown people away. This is, like, I think statistically, according to Ken Palm, this is the second best measured team in the history of that metric that goes back 30 years. They're the second best team, only to the 98-99 Duke team that lost to UConn in the national championship. And that team was incredible, with Trajan Langdon, Elton Brand, and a bunch of other people on that team. I think Corey Maggette was on that team as well. Houston they're old, they're veteran, they're rugged, they're tough. This will be a war. But ultimately, I think Duke is just going to be able to wear out Houston, and Cooper Flagg, I think, is going to have a strong game. I think Knippel, and it's just like, the one thing that you don't account for if you haven't watched Duke they are so freaking tall, and like, Houston's best guards are significantly smaller. Like, LJ Cryer is a dude, but it's just like Duke's guards and Duke's just people, they're just so much bigger than everybody else. And there's very few teams that are going to be able to match up with them. And as rough and tough as Houston is, this is not a great matchup for them. They're going to have to make some perimeter shots. They're going to have to score. And this is probably one of the best offensively talented Houston teams that Kelvin Sampson's ever had. But even then, man, Duke is just like Duke beat Alabama, who was probably one of the top 10 teams in the country. They beat them by 20 points. Like, they have just been clobbering good teams. Like, we could look at it, and I'll get to the championship game in a second. We could look back relatively soon on this Duke team as one of the greatest teams that's ever played college basketball. Yes, they've lost a few games this year, but this is, honest to God, one of the most physically and, like, just from a talent perspective, one of the best teams ever constructed in the history of the sport, in the history of college basketball. And if they finish this off in the championship game, it's going to be definitely a topic for discussion. So I've got Duke beating Houston. I got Duke facing Florida in the national championship game. That's what I had initially. I picked Florida before the tournament just because of how impressed I was. They won the tournament in the best league in college basketball. But upon further review, I am going to do something that I normally do not do. I'm going to change my pick and I'm going to say Duke wins the national championship here. And the reason why is at full strength, who do I trust more? I go with Cooper Flag and the Blue Devils because they just like their best game is better than Florida's best game, in my opinion. Now, Duke could just have a crazy cold game. They maybe could, Walter Clayton hits a bunch of shots and goes crazy. How does good stuff off the bench and their depth and foul trouble gets to Duke. But to me, Duke just feels like the best team. And Baylor, as an 8 or 9 seed, clobbered them. They were beating the crap out of Arizona, who's the runner-up in the Big 12. Um, and then they just absolutely freaking annihilated Alabama. They freaking annihilated Alabama. Alabama in the same league. They annihilated probably the third best team, widely considered, probably one of like third or it's one of the top 5 teams in the SEC. And 2 of them are in the Final Four. They beat Alabama by 20, held them to under 70 points, which hardly ever happens. That team averages about 90 a game. Duke is really good. And I was before the tournament, I was unsure about Cooper Flag and what his health was. If he's even half as good as he has been, Duke is in a really good position. If some of these other pieces like a Knipple or Malawach, if they show up, it's just going to be really hard to beat this team. There's so many ways that they can beat you. And again, I will say it again. If Duke wins the national championship come Monday night, we're going to have a serious discussion about, are they the best team to ever play college basketball? Because they've been dominant. Their losses have been very minor by, I think I saw they've had no losses by more than double digits. Like it's hard to beat this team. And most of their wins are by 15 to 20 points. Again, second best team according to Ken Palm in the history of the sport. There's a reason why that metric exists. So we'll see how this shakes out, but I've got Duke winning the national championship, going against what I did because, like I said, this is one of those rare instances where I just didn't know with the Cooper Flag injury how this was going to go. So give me the Blue Devils to win the national title. This should be one of the best Final Fours we've ever seen. It should be competitive. I do think Duke will be challenged, and that will be a topic for discussion. What happens when they get punched in the mouth? How do they respond? Because that's really like, if they don't respond, that's really the only way I think you can beat this team is if you punch them in the mouth and they can't recover, which I have a lot of confidence that they will be able to win both these games in San Antonio. Granted, it'll be maybe almost close to a glorified road game since Houston is not that far from San Antonio, but Duke fans travel. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.